Can death be sleep when life is but a dream, and scenes of bliss pass as a phantom by? The transient pleasures as a vision seem, and yet we think the greatest pains to die. How strange it is that man on earth should roam, and lead a life of woe, but not forsake his rugged path, nor dare he view alone his future doom, which is but to awake. Entity is a game that is rather hard to describe. It was released in April by an indie developer called Arkoya. It is a strange game where the player's vision is significantly altered to create psychedelic visuals. Despite what initially seems to be chaotic noise, there are rules to it which allow the player to pass from one scene to another. Really, it's just one of those weird games that I occasionally become entranced by. The gameplay of Entity is simple. You have the WASD keys which move the player around, and the left and right mouse button that interact with the environment. The visual distortion makes it difficult to tell exactly what the controls do, but with enough experimentation you can figure out basically what's going on. But here's the crux. What are you actually supposed to do? And it's hard to say. Entity banks on playing off of the player's sense of exploration because each scene has slightly different mechanics for progression. The main point of this exploration seems to be experiencing and creating psychedelic visuals that arise from the components in the environment. After all, the developers push the player towards a website where the player shares their found footage from the game. It's a strange and experiential method of play. What I find really interesting about the visuals of this game is the simplicity of the environment. While the visual distortion of Entity makes the environment look alien and complex, the reality seems to be very simple. It is a blank landscape with a few simple entities that the player can clip through. If you were to just put about 5 human figures in a blank space, you would basically recreate the initial scene of the game. Everything in the game banks on the visual distortion to be even vaguely interesting, and that's just an interesting case study in the power of visuals. Now, the million-dollar question is whether or not there is any point in this game beyond making interesting visuals. The scenes are not randomly generated and are not randomly experienced. Each entity is specifically placed and scenes occur in a particular progression. That is not enough to show any meaning, but it points to an intentionality in the game's structure. What points to a potential meaning is the name of the scenes. Both the Steam achievements and an in-game gallery associate each of the scenes in the game with a cryptic name. Examples would include agnosia, autonomy, and amor fati. Initially, I was inclined to believe that there might be some meaning to the order in which they appeared, but I've come to doubt that train of thought. The game does not tell you the name of each scene as you enter it, except by giving the player an achievement in Steam. If the order was important, then it would stand to reason that the developer would be more intentional about telling the player the name of each scene. Instead, I'm inclined to believe that the game is some sort of metaphor for a person's passage through life, or visual representations of the ideas inherent in the names of each scene. Scenes such as affine, meaning to preserve parallel relationships in mathematics, points to the former interpretation. Many of the names have mathematical definitions that could stand as metaphors for relationship. Also, passing from scenes that resemble lovers to a strange scene named as if to no longer could be a visual metaphor of sex. The name resembles the passage from Matthew 19:6, so they are no longer two but one flesh. There is some potential for either of these ideas, but I cannot say anything for certain. If there is a purpose greater than creating aesthetic scenes from visual noise, it is hidden by the game's general vagueness. Overall, Entity is an intriguing experience, but it lacks a core purpose to sustain that experience. Each of the scenes were interesting to decipher, but they lasted too long and never led to anything beyond a lot of moving colors. As a digital sculpture, it is an intriguing piece, but it is unlikely to hold your attention for more than an hour or two. There may be some greater purpose behind the piece, but it gives the player very little to think about and even less to connect one scene to another. Just creating found art from visual noise is a weak premise for a game. I applaud the radical direction that this game took, and a few more iterations with more intentional purpose could create a compelling experience. However, as it stands, I would not recommend it, especially for its full price. Keep an eye on this concept because it could be fostered into a brilliant experience in the future. With that, thanks for watching and, as always, enjoy the rest of your day.